Welcome to Torah-Instruction, mind, body, and well-being. And we're going to talk about these latter days. I like to get real deep. So I asked the Chat GPT or whatever this is, same thing. It's Chat GPT, Google, AI, all that. But I'm watching Caramello. Shout out Caramello. He been going to war with the Chat GPTs and everything. So, because you got to talk to this thing a certain way, you got to be specific. You got to be specific of what you're looking for, and you got to be specific of what you're not looking for. Because we looking for Hebrew. We don't want Jewish. We don't want Christian. We don't want none of that other stuff. We want the Hebrew. We want Hebrew interpretation. That's it. So, I asked the question, what are the latter days or the terrible day that is described in the Hebrew Bible without Jewish and Christian interpretation? Only Hebrew. Plain and simple. Direct. Don't give me that bullshit. So, in the Hebrew Bible, the phrase the great and terrible day appears explicitly in Joel and Malachi. Without theological interpretation, the text describes this day as a specific period of cosmic disturbance and judgment, followed immediately by a tangible restoration of the land and society. The description of the terrible day, the text defines this day not as a single moment, but as a period characterized by darkness, cosmic signs, and military devastation. Cosmic disturbance. The sun turns to darkness and the moon to blood before the day arrives. Joel 2:31. Yoel 2:31. Atmosphere. It is described as a day of clouds and thick darkness, unlike any other in history. Yoel 2:2. Nature of the event. The Hebrew term Nora, terrible, awesome, derives from the root yair, to fear. It is a day of wrath, trouble, distress, and devastation, where fortresses are destroyed. Zephaniah 1:15-16. Scope. It is a day of sacrifice where God, Hawah, executes judgments on nations and specifically on those who oppress Israel. Zephaniah 1:7. Malachi 3:5. The immediate aftermath. What follows? According to the literal sequence of the Hebrew text, the terrible day transitions directly into an era of physical restoration and divine presence in Jerusalem. There is no description of an afterlife or spiritual heaven in these passages. The sequences are earthly. Sequences. No, it's consequences. What I'm talking about. I'm bugging. Consequences are earthly. Divine presence and protection. Immediately following the judgment, the text states that Hawah, the Lord, becomes physically present in Zion, Jerusalem. Yoel 3:17. So you shall know that I am the Lord, your Elohim, dwelling in Zion, my holy mountain. Result. Jerusalem becomes holy, and strangers shall never again pass through it. Agricultural and physical restoration. The text describes a reversal of the devastation caused by the locusts and war. Yoel 3:18. And that day the mountains shall drip sweet wine, and the hills shall flow with milk. Water source. A fountain comes forth from the house of the Lord to water the valley of Shittim, a dry Achaia filled region, indicating the healing of the desert. Security. Judah and Jerusalem are inhabited forever, and their blood guilt is pardoned. Yoel 30:20-21. The condition of the nation. The text describes a geopolitical shift where nations no longer wage war against Jerusalem. Zechariah 14. Following the day of battle where Jerusalem is partially captured, the Lord goes forth to fight the nations. The result is the Lord becomes king over all the earth. Zechariah 14:9. Survival Only those among the nations who survive come up year after year to worship the king and keep the Feast of Booths. Zechariah 14:16. Those who do not come receive no rain. The final status in the text. The Hebrew Bible concludes its prophetic sequence regarding this day with a binary outcome based on the text of Malachi. For the righteous, the Son of Righteousness rises with healing in its wings. They go out leaping like calves from the stall and tread down the wicked who become ashes under the soles of their feet. Malachi 4, verses 2 to 3. For the wicked, the day burns like an oven, leaving them neither root nor branch. Malachi 4:1. The literal narrative ends with the command to remember the Torah of Moses, the promise that Elijah, the prophet, will be sent before the day comes to turn the hearts of fathers to children and children to fathers, preventing the land from becoming struck with a curse. Harem. Malachi 4:4-6. The text leaves the reader awaiting this turning point to avert the total destruction described. Now I want to elaborate. Let's elaborate. Let's see if we can get a couple more nuggets out of it. I ain't gonna hold y'all too long. Let's see what comes out of this. While we waiting, shout out UBTV, shout out 9 Spiral, shout out Natural by Law. All right. Shout out Dragon Canoe, Fisher of Israel, Aboriginal Truth. Shout out all ox. All right. Elaborating strictly on the Hebrew text of the Tanakh, the latter days of the period immediately following the great and terrible day involves a specific sequence of geological transformation, regime change, and universal pilgrimage. The text describes a shift from cosmic chaos to a stabilized holy order centered in Jerusalem. Geological and cosmic transformation. The transition begins with a literal physical alteration of the landscape surrounding Jerusalem, specifically triggered by the divine presence. That's a why. The splitting of the Mountain of Olives. In Zechariah 14:4, the text states that on this day, the Lord's feet will stand on the Mountain of Olives. The mountain will physically split in two from east to west, creating a very great valley. Half the mountain moves north, half south. This provides a literal escape route for the inhabitants who flee to the valley. Disruption of light. Zechariah 14:6-7 describes a day where there shall be no light, cold, or frost. Literal Hebrew implies a cessation of normal light cycles. It will be a unique day known only to the Lord, neither day nor night, but at evening time there will be light. Living waters. Following the battle, Zechariah 14:8 states that living waters shall flow out from Jerusalem, half toward the eastern sea, Dead Sea, and half towards the western sea, Mediterranean. This flow continues in summer and in winter, indicating a permanent suspension of seasonal drought. The fate of the nations, regime change. The text details a binary outcome for the nations that gather against Jerusalem. The plague. Zechariah 14:12. Plagues. Describes a specific plague sent by the Lord upon the attacking armies. Their flesh rots while they stand on their feet. Their eyes rot in their sockets and their tongues rot in their mouths. Internal confusion. A great panic from the Lord falls upon them, causing them to seize each other's hands and fight one another. Zechariah 14:13. Universal kingship. The literal political outcome is stated in Zechariah 14:9. The Lord will be king over all the earth. On that day there shall be one Lord, and his name one. This indicates the end of polytheistic or rival national sovereignties. Mandatory pilgrimage. The survivors of the nations are not destroyed, but subjected to a new law. They must go up from year to year to yasheral to worship the king and keep the Feast of Booths. Consequence. If any family or nation refuses to come, no rain will fall upon them. Zechariah 14:17. Mitzrayim is specifically mentioned as a target of this plague if they fail to ascend. Holiness in the end of Canaanite. The final state of the society in Jerusalem is defined by total consecration, removing the distinction between sacred and secular spaces. Holy bells, Zechariah 14:20, predicts that even the bells on the horses will be inscribed with holy to the Lord. Wow. Sacred utensils, cooking pots in the Lord's house will be sacred as the bowls before the altar. No more traitors. The text concludes 14:12 that there shall no longer be a Canaanite in the house of the Lord. The Hebrew word Canaanite here can mean a merchant or a trader, implying the removal of commercial exploitation from the sacred space, or literally the removal of foreign peoples who do not adhere to the new order. The meaning of the curse in Malachi. The sequence ends with the warning in Malachi 4:6. The text warns that if the hearts of fathers and children are not turned to one another before the day comes, Hawa will come and strike the land with a curse. Definition of Herem. In the Hebrew Bible, Herem refers to something devoted to destruction or placed under a total ban, as in the conquest of Jericho or Jericho. It implies total annihilation or complete removal, not just a mild penalty. The alternative, the turning of hearts, reconciliation, and return to the covenant, is presented as the only mechanism to avert this total destruction of the land. This text leaves the narrative suspended at this warning, awaiting the arrival of Elijah to execute this turning. In summary, the Hebrew text depicts the latter days not as an escape from earth, but as a radical transformation of earth. Jerusalem becomes the global capital. The geography is permanently altered to support life. The nations are subjected to a single divine rule and mandatory worship, and society is purged of all profane elements. And stop. And we're back. So just want to provide a little context. I'm more in the UB TV, Con Drop, Cure Mayo, Natural by Law, Dragon Canoe, Aboriginal Thought. I'm trying to include everybody and not exclude, but I know I'm going to exclude somebody. But this is what we're talking about when we're talking about the Holy Land, which is America. Something similar to this. So yeah, that's something that you can, if you watch this video, if it popped up in your algorithm, something that you can think about. But notice in all the texts that I read, there was no mention of a JC, no mention of riding on horses and different color horses, none of that. So people, the Christians expecting that nonsense, no. But I'm gonna end it at that. Just around 13, close to 14 minutes. I don't want to keep you too long. I'll be back with some more. Holla.